You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated across our radio and TV partners. First still out of 93 WYBC in Indianapolis. Producer Allison, are you out there on the horn in Indy this evening?
Hello.
I just got to ask. I know that you may not be aware, but there's a really special election happening this evening. Do you know where in the wide country that this special election is happening?
I believe it is our neighbors-ish to the south, Tennessee.
That is correct. Tennessee. Now, I know that Tennessee may not sound like a very important state to those Hoosiers who are listening out of our first station or our sister stations as well in Little Rock or in Aurora in Colorado, but rest assured, the Tennessee special election this evening, in its last hour, the polls close in 53 minutes, is very important to the country because it is going to function as the bellwether. It is a very pro-Trump district, that being Tennessee's 7th, and if Behn, no, not the cool one from The Dark Knight Rises, the really annoying menopausal one, named Aftyn, which is a really sad name for a child. I didn't know you could name your child Aftyn. Of course, other directions of the boatton. Starboardton. We got aft and port and starboard. All right, I'm sorry. We'll give you updates on those as we continue throughout the evening. First and foremost, though, big doings in Minneapolis, by which I mean Omar Fateh, the Somalian almost mayor of the city. He's out here yelling out as loud as he can. Why? Because he says, quote, ICE has been seen all over Minneapolis. And Midwesterners went, yeah, man, it's winter. There's a big snowstorm that rolled on through. No, not that ICE. The kind that they think is the Gestapo, abducting our neighbors from the streets and their homes as part of their operation. Please share this thread with your friends and neighbors to make sure they have access to the resources necessary to protect each other. Now, hang on. He's telling his people in Minneapolis, you need to share these resources so that people can try to thwart federal law enforcement. What are these resources? Well, one of them is Jacob Frey, the guy who beat Omar Fateh. He spoke today and announced that it was just inhuman and un-American of Donald Trump to enforce federal law in Minneapolis, the place where over 70 Somalians were just, arrested for several kinds of fraud over $1 billion worth and a lot of other serious crimes. But Jacob Frey, he says it's un-American to do what Trump is doing, and then does the most American thing of all. He breaks into a Somalian speech. Here you go.
That's not American. That's not what we are about. And we're going to do right by every single person in our cities. And so, to our Somali community, Daman Shabka, Somalied Kunul, Minnesota, Garahan, Minneapolis, Waan, Kuji Janila Hai, Waan, Ku, Gereb, Taganahan.
Producer Nick, were you moved?
How many days do you think his Duolingo string in Somali is?
A very, very good question. I've never heard a Jawa from Tatooine speak so clearly before. And an Udini to you too, sir. I just want to know if he actually communicated the sale to the Jawas early enough, or he's stuck with R5 and the bad motivator. Beautiful, beautiful poetry. I don't know what he said in Somali because I'm, what's the right word? Oh, I'm an American. I don't speak Somali. I speak the first language of this country. And then when I'm feeling a little spicy, I also speak Spanish, which, that's just for fun and not required. So then the police chief of Minneapolis gets up in front of the crowd and says something that is highly illegal. Here you go.
Folks that are masked, that they're not sure if they're law enforcement, that they may be kidnapping people. Like, we have had those reports. I want to be clear to the community. The community should know that if you see something like that is legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, you should call 911. And you should provide as much information as possible, because let's not forget, We very recently had tragedy in this state by someone who was purporting to be law enforcement. So please, let's be clear. That's something everyone should report and that we will immediately respond to and we will document whether.
Now, by the way, these reports that he's talking about, have they actually caught anyone in Minneapolis trying to impersonate ICE in order to kidnap people? No, not that we've seen. Not at all. But again, he's saying, hey, if federal law enforcement shows up to your door, call us and we'll come out and intervene. Against federal law enforcement, you can't do that. That's illegal. Producer Nick.
I believe he's referencing the loss of Representative Hortman, which the police had responded to throughout the process of the crime and failed to properly document it and prevent it from happening.
Now, that's an actual good example. That is. It's a great example because, again, with the horrible and brutal murder of Hortman and her husband, that's something that, you really should be careful about law enforcement. But in the case of the Minneapolis law enforcement, the Minnesota law enforcement in that situation, they were a hindrance, not a help. Again, just a kind of a concept out here, but we'll let him continue.
Somebody's not sure if there's a kidnapping happening. Somebody's not sure if there's law enforcement present or not. And that's something else that's additional policy requirements that we are implementing, that we will document and report these types of things anytime that we hear it, and reminding our officers of their duty to intervene. So if there is anything that is,
their duty to intervene against federal law enforcement? No, that's not anything at all found in the Minnesota State Constitution. It's not, of course, found in the United States Constitution. You can't interfere with federal law enforcement. Absolutely not. And the media enterprise is already losing it because federal agents are apparently, according to reports across national media, are walking around talking to people who appear to be Somalian. And they're very, very offended over it. Here are two of the very offended dudes.
Yes.
What was that about?
I don't know. These guys just randomly take me off. I'm a citizen of this country, and they take me off and they hold me. They detain me here. I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea. These guys are so stupid. I don't know what they're talking.
They check what they want to see.
My passport. I give my ID. I give my passport ID. Everything. They didn't want to listen to me. They want to talk to their supervisors.
I love that. It's like, oh man, they wanted to see, like my ID, and then I showed it to them. It's like, I noticed you're not detained anymore. So there you go. I mean, you're just like any other traffic stop. The officers like, I'd like to see your, license identification, insurance paperwork, and then you show them, and then everything's fine. The need to be victims is just incredible to me.
Yeah, and he didn't even say that he brought out his driver's license. He said passport, and which means that they used it to check to see if he had a warrant for deportation. And because he didn't, he got to stay. It's almost like the system works. You
really don't have any right at all in this country to tell federal immigration and customs enforcement, you need a warrant to look through my stuff. In fact, by all means, please tell the next time you're entering the country, go ahead and tell customs they have no right to look through your bag. They have no right to ask you what you're bringing into the country. See how that works for you there, champ. No.
Interesting that he had his passport on him, though, as a form of identification. I thought they weren't.
I thought
they were smart enough to have identification on them.
What's the line that's often given that brown and black people are
Kinkos.
They're unable to get an ID.
They don't know what the internet is.
Yeah, that's really a high bar to leap over. Really good thing from the Trump administration on immigration today. The situation in which the Afghani migrant, of course, shot and killed one of the National Guardsmen from West Virginia in Washington, D.C. The other is now awake and responsive, but still in rough condition. The Trump administration has now announced that, in part because of this particular murder, all of the Afghani migrants in the country that have come in under the Biden migration push, that the New York Times said was so they wouldn't cross the border illegally, so they could get social security numbers, something that I was told wasn't happening. They are now all going to be re-vetted. Here was Carolyn Levitt making that case today.
The border is now secure, thanks to President Trump. But the threat in our interior remains real and urgent. These public safety threats are already inside our land. And President Trump was elected on a promise to find and remove them. And he has already taken significant steps and made significant progress towards fulfilling this promise. But there is more work to be done because President Trump believes that he has a sacred obligation to reverse the calamity of mass, unchecked migration into our country. As a result, the Trump administration is now actively re-examining all of the Afghans imported into the country by Joe Biden. Any individual who threatens our national security or our citizenry will be subject to removal. President Trump has already permanently paused migration of foreign nationals from third world countries that pose a very high risk to the United States.
Now, that's a very good answer. Radio crew, we got to send you to commercial. We'll be back in just a second. We'll continue on the live stream. In the meantime, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, there is a little bit more in the way of news out of Minneapolis. First of all, Tim Walz has waltzed out yet again. He is excited to announce a huge new law he's signing. Now, he's been in the news and also possibly under some severe criminal investigation, given the massive amounts of fraud that he presided over and presumably ignored. Here he was today, though, announcing, I'm not joking, another financial incentive program from the Minnesota state government. Here you go.
And one of the things that has been missing in America is what happens if you have a child? How do you take time away, and how do you bond with that child, which we know all the research shows.
I don't know if we have the time to have the birds and the bees
How are baby made?
Tim, we have this problem. Nobody knows how babies are made. I mean, what if you have a baby just by accident?
My wife walked up to me the other day and said she was pregnant. How did that happen?
Coming from the guy who's so strongly advocated for tampons in boys' bathrooms, not at all surprised he's this concerned about wondering where and how babies are made and where they come from. But sorry, to his actual serious announcement here. Again, he's doing the blazer and the quarter zip thing, which unless you are a football coach in the SEC who's currently like 3-15, I don't think you have the right to wear that combo. But we'll let him try it.
Time away, and how do you bond with that child, which we know all the research shows how big a difference that makes.
How do you get close with your kid? I don't understand.
This 3-day-old's just sitting there staring at me. How do I interact with this thing?
It's too funny.
Or what happens if you've got a family member that's sick? My family's going through that right now.
I mean, just take them out to the pasture and shoot them. I mean, that's what we've been doing. There's got to be another way.
Now with a mother-in-law. Or what happens if you yourself have an illness and have to be either through treatments or hospitalized? The choice in the past was lose your job or go broke, or care for yourself. Or, as we were just saying, if you're lucky enough to have family support and people who do that, it's not the way things should be done. And I continue to say this.
This is the worst infomercial I've ever heard in my life. This man is no Vince Offer. This ain't ShamWow.
My mom had a cold, so now I have no job, and we're sitting here on the street wondering what we're going to do with this new baby that we just found.
How am I going to be close with my kid? I know, I'll be homeless. Yes, that was the only choice up until now.
United States is about one of 3 or 4 countries that doesn't have some type of program like this. Now we join the states that are going to implement a paid family medical leave program.
Okay, so Tim Walz gets out in front of the public and announces they are introducing a paid family and medical leave program. That's right, Minnesota, the state that definitely didn't just have a major over $1 billion fraud scandal on the abuse of charity, monies taken from starving children and sent back to Somalia. Now, Minnesota, again, definitely not a, corrupt state government, has announced that they are providing a state-run program to give leave that anyone can just apply to. And literally the excuse that you can put on the paper, the reason, why do you need aid? I want to be close with my son. Give me money. Give me money. Incredible. Just, I'm amazed. Producer Nick.
The money that's just coming from nowhere.
Yeah, just
Minnesotans just somehow have money lying around still, apparently.
I really do love it. It's fantastic. Now, by the way, I should mention that there are other socialist angry yellings going on in the country today. Zoran Mamdani joined Bernie Sanders on strike in New York City outside of a Starbucks. Not kidding. They went on strike against Starbucks today. We'll have to play that in a minute. First, we got to talk about this Secretary of War scandal, airstrike stuff. And to do that, we got to go to Rob Bluey out of Washington, D.C. He's on the Hill. He has the words to soothe our souls in this turbulent time. And also, maybe Judge James Boasberg is going to get canned by the Senate of all places. It's going to be awesome. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We got a full show tonight.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast with special guest Rob Bluey.
All right, you've heard the Bluey music, so now we bring on a totally different Bluey, Rob Bluey, the president of the Daily Signal, who had my spot this morning, thanks Indianapolis International Airport, in the Department of War press briefing this morning. Thanks for taking my spot. I appreciate it, for covering for me.
Well, Tony, I wish I could have lived up to the expectations and actually asked a question, but the briefing room was mostly full. Not every single seat was full, but for the most part, Kingsley Wilson, who is the press secretary, answered a series of questions over the course of 25 minutes, including one from our colleague Bradley Devlin.
Yes, Bradley.
We're now 90 days into these Venezuelan drug boat strikes. A growing number of members on Capitol Hill are getting their mettle up with regard to war powers. If they do move forward with some sort of war powers effort, will the administration seek to challenge the validity of the war powers resolution, or will it comply?
I wouldn't want to get ahead of the president's decision-making process in regard to Venezuela, but I can tell you what I mentioned earlier is that the department is a planning organization. We are always ready. We have plans for every single contingency, and we are going to make sure that when it comes to narco-terrorism, we're dismantling that throughout the Western Hemisphere, and you've seen that in the success of our strikes.
One follow-up, if I may. 53% in a recent CBS YouGov poll said they support the strikes on these drug boats, but 70% said no military operations within Venezuela. Nevertheless, members of Congress are increasingly calling for regime change there. What's the Department of War's message to those members of Congress?
The Department of War stands behind the president 100%, and we will execute on the orders that our commander-in-chief gives us, and we're proud to do so. That will continue. And again, any decision that is going to be made about certain military actions in the Western Hemisphere region will be the president's alone.
It was great to be there. For all of my time working in Washington, D.C., including as a reporter, editor, this was the first time I was in the briefing room for a press conference. That's hard to believe, but I do. There was a sign there right near the lectern that said that this is the most transparent War Department ever. Now, I know that folks at the Associated Press and Washington Post and other outlets would strongly disagree with that, but I do have to give this administration credit for reaching out and making space available to individuals who in the past have been shut out. And in fact, as you know, from our own experience at the Daily Signal, quite literally blocked from the White House and Congress. And so it's great to have a seat in the room.
So this is obviously a rather contentious week for the Department of War. The Washington Post story and the merciless war crime rumors of whatever. I will say it is a little on the nose. We covered this on the show yesterday evening. Now you have Jackie Rosen coming out dressed like a very exhausted kindergarten teacher, demanding that Secretary Hegseth resign immediately. Do they really think this is going to be like their striving moment? What's the Beltway attitude about this whole business right now?
Well, I let's face it, there are very few Democrats, if any, who have any affection for Pete Hegseth. So I'm not surprised by their calls for his resignation or these, trumped up charges of war crimes. As Kingsley pointed out at the briefing today, the New York Times has since refuted what the Washington Post reported. So it's interesting that you have two liberal media establishment kind of at two ends of the spectrum when it comes to the September 2nd incident. But setting that aside, I think what's most important here is for the American people, viewers, listeners of the Tony Kinnett Cast, to understand that there's a lot of political posturing going on the part of Democrats. As you and I have talked about on numerous occasions, the Democrats can't find a message that's resonating. And so they're just grasping for anything that they think might hold. And this is just the latest one. It's the first week of December, so they're on to something new. Pete Hegseth happens to be the guy.
So when I don't know if this will get me in trouble or not. When I was a kid and my dad and I would go shopping after school, we would always be able to tell when it was the first week of the month because all of the people would be out on the roads, and my dad would say, with a typical Midwestern lack of political correctness, well, it must be the Social Security checks and the welfare checks have come in. Everyone's out on the road. And it kind of became a running joke for a long time. And obviously that he was just joking. But the point that being made is every beginning of the month, Democrats run out with their new PR campaign, and the Kilmar Abrego Garcia situation, it didn't stick. And then they ran out with their Trump's killing everyone on Snap. It didn't stick. And now here's the new one. I don't really know of a single American outside of the Beltway that's seen this and is like, yes, the walls are closing in. This is the end. I'm so angry. No one's focusing on this except those inside the Beltway.
Tony, you would know this better than me, given your experience with the military. But what I don't fully understand where the Democrats are going is, if the mission is to take out these drug boats and those who are perpetrating the flow of narcotics into the United States, and it requires 2 strikes, that to me seems like it's the same instance. And I don't understand why everyone is getting so worked up over the second strike when it came to this Washington Post story. Of course, like as we just talked about, the New York Times has since helped add some clarity to that. I did think the other important note that Kingsley made at the briefing today, though, was that the Washington Post erroneously quoted, she said just made up the quote and attributed it to Pete Hegseth. I mean, talk about irresponsible journalism. And so these are the types of things that I think the Democrats latch onto, and there's not even truth behind them. And that's probably why the American people don't hold a lot of stock, not only in the establishment media, but also members of Congress who just run out with these wild accusations.
Can you imagine how upset to the point of violence our editor-in-chief, Kate, would be if I made the insane decision to just make up a quote by someone in a story that we were running? I wouldn't get a moment's sleep afterward how quickly she'd come after me for that.
Well, in most journalism outlets, it would be a fireable offense. And it was in the past when you had people fabricating information like that. And now it's just kind of like an everyday occurrence, it seems. So I'm disappointed in the way that things have played out. But I ultimately think that, as you and I have talked about so many times before, this is just another episode where the Democrats are going to get worked up. There's going to be calls for Hegseth's impeachment. Maybe we'll even see some articles of impeachment. Apparently, that's part of the Democrats'
dastardly deeds undone.
Right.
Yes,
right. But you're right. They'll be on to another thing next week. As long as it involves bashing Trump, they will try to gravitate and seize the moment. And I just think that the American people see through that. What they are expecting are results. You're seeing that play out at the cabinet meeting today. There's a lot of focus on the cost of living, and I'm glad to see that the president and his cabinet secretaries are turning their attention to what is the number one issue for the American people, and that is the high cost of gas, groceries, and rent.
Okay, so this brings us down to just 2 things I want to get your take on real quick, because again, you have more insight to these things than those of us on the outside. There is a lot of talk about the Senate possibly looking at Judge James Boasberg, of course, in his closeness to Arctic frost and approving illegal warrants and tracking and senators, things like that. And then also there's some new questions as to whether or not Mayorkas is going to be brought before Congress relating to his handling of the Afghani migrant situation, which has now resulted in 2 shot National Guardsmen, one of them killed. What is the rumblings on Capitol Hill about any kind of action on these things?
Well, I will tell you that the conservatives are eager for Congress to step up and exert its Article 1 authorities, not only for the oversight that's needed for these out-of-control judges, but I think particularly to hold those accountable for who are responsible for the policies that led to some of these tragic occurrences. And so there's no better role for Congress to play right now, quite frankly, than to do exactly what you've just outlined. Whether or not they actually follow through on it is another matter. Right. And that is where I think individuals, people who particularly who are being represented by these members of Congress in Washington, need to make their voice heard, and that's a perfect example of how they can hopefully have an impact and make sure that that Congress follows through.
Awesome. Rob Bluey, president of the Daily Signal. Thanks for giving us a little bit of an in the Beltway update. Again, sorry that I couldn't give it this week myself, but we'll have to find another time.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, let's send the radio crew over to commercial because I have to send you that way. And we'll continue on the live stream. No commercials there. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, let's talk about some of these war crimes updates because the stupid has come out swinging. So there was an excellent question by Rumble user Cat on a Lake who asked right before Thanksgiving, can you give me a little bit of your background on why you hate the state of Connecticut? And this is true. It has replaced California as my least favorite state in the entire country. Please. No. It's a privilege to despise the state of Connecticut. And here's why. Representative Jim Hines. He's, one of Connecticut's best. He went on TV today and announced that there's no such thing as a narco-terrorist. They don't even exist. Narco-terrorists are a figment of your imagination, like unicorns and the King of England.
There is no such thing as a narco-terrorist. There are very, very bad narcotics people, cartels, etc., but they're desperate to make this look like it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda because that's the very thin line on which their illegal use of the United States military to take these people out resides.
So obviously, he's trying to use this to say, again, he's trying to say, well, the Trump administration wants to declare war on whomever, whatever it wants. That's his take here. He's doing this in the stupidest way possible. Cartel Instagram. You familiar with what I'm talking about? Cartel Instagram, cartel social media. There are cartel accounts that post all of their like recruitment reels about like how great it is to work for the cartel. And there are lots of explosives and Kalashnikov rifles and a lot of other terrorist accoutrements that the cartels are using and weaponizing to commit their various atrocities that they're known for committing in South and Central America and, of course, in the United States. That's terrorist activity. I don't care how much you don't like the Trump administration, whatever, you have a personal problem, go talk to your wife or her boyfriend about it. But at the moment, trying to claim that just narco-terrorists, they don't exist. As you pointed out, Antifa doesn't exist. No, that ain't the move.
I mean, the groups killing Mexican representatives and elected officials for political reasons, that's not terrorism. That's just them participating in the Mexican representation system, their government. And
again, this is actually this summary, Cat on a Lake. This is why I despise Connecticut. Connecticut is the academic, suburban, self-entitled capital of the East Coast. Everyone in Connecticut that is in public office acts like this. Every single one, which, by the way, is funny now. According to all available polling data, good old Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, has a 0% approval rating. So first time I've ever seen that. It's impressive. So that's a guy who thinks that he's going to run for president of the United States. But we'll get to him and Senator Mark Kelly in a little bit because Chuck Schumer, he's out with an amazing announcement. I quoted him yesterday on the show, but I didn't realize his full context was this embarrassing. Chuck Schumer, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, first, before I get to the issue of the day, or maybe this is, so according to press reports, Trump said this on the alleged drug boats.
He shushed the senators.
He said, I want those boats taken out, and if we have to, we will attack on land also. Let me be clear. If Trump were to order an attack on land, that would be an act of war, and Congress would invoke the War Powers Act. It's Congress's prerogative to go to war, and I hope Republicans will defend that role.
Okay, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Chuck Schumer's here for you and me. We got to bring the radio back. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. It's a beautiful, beautiful evening. The polls close in the state of Tennessee for their 7th Congressional Special Election in 25 minutes. And because The balance of Congress right now is rather slim because, you've had members who are resigning. Marjorie Taylor Greene has announced that she's tired of being a beaten spouse, so she's resigning. Weird. Okay. And you have a lot of other members of Congress. It's a very thin margin right now. And so with the special election in Tennessee, kind of an important moment for both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, who think that they have a key amount of momentum. Now, who are these people running for the seat of the Tennessee 7th Congressional? And for that matter, where the heck is the Tennessee Congressional? Well, the Tennessee 7th Congressional, that's right outside of Nashville. It is to the west of Nashville, and it includes a small blue pocket that voted for Kamala Harris in 2024, and the rest is rather red, except for a vaguely sort of to the red. Now, this is expected to go for the Republican candidate this evening, Matt Van Epps. He is a West Point graduate, so I'm a huge fan of his, and he's expected to do pretty decently. The House actually got off its butt and sent some important people to go do some campaigning. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was out at a rally for Matt Van Epps. And by the way, remember how during some elections we often talk about, the House and the Senate leadership, they're not getting into these really tough, tooth and nail elections. They're not getting in there and fighting. Here is a case in which you have House and Senate leadership that are putting their foot down in this election. It matters. Because I guarantee you, as soon as we get into an election, if Republicans lose several years from now, it's going to be, Republican leadership never cares about anything. Here's an instance in where they are. And Trump did the most Trump thing ever. He gets out his cell phone and he calls Mike Johnson in the middle of it and says, I tell you what, I don't like that Aftyn Behn. She hates everything that I like. Here's Donald Trump on speakerphone with Mike Johnson at a Matt Van Epps rally. Pretty good stuff.
Two things above all else that bothered me. Number one, she hates Christianity. Number two, she hates country music. How the hell can you elect a person like that?
That's incredible. I love it. I do. I mean, come on. I mean, it's such a Trump thing to say. She hates country music. George Strait never moved her heart. I mean, it's just good stuff.
Hearing phone calls with Trump when he calls into places reminds me of 2016 presidential run Trump.
When he would just call into random networks, be like, I was watching your show and your tie looks terrible. And also,
no wonder your ratings are horrible.
Your mom's a hoe. Just hang up the phone, line would be dead. Incredible. Good stuff. So let's get into who the people are. So first of all, we'll start with Aftyn Behn. The reason that you're hearing about this election right now, they have picked the nuttiest nut job since the Jif commercial. This is a complete nutcase. All right, squirrels are after her. This is Aftyn Behn. She is a state legislator who has, of course, been on audio talking about how she hates the people of Nashville because, if you're running for a congressional seat outside of Nashville, hating Nashville seems like a political suicide move, but here she is.
I've been heavily involved with the Nashville mayoral race because I hate the city, I hate the bachelorettes, I hate the pedal taverns, I hate country music, I hate all of the things that make Nashville apparently an it city to the rest of the country, but I hate it. Yeah, I'm that girl at the airport that all these bachelorettes are giddy walking out in their two-toned colored Pantone pink shirts, and they walk out and they're like, oh my god, Nashville is so bad.
Yes, so yes, hating tourism in a city that is primarily engaging in tourism as a part of its economy. Excellent move. This would be like someone saying, man, I really hate in Indianapolis. I hate those, lines of traffic outside Lucas Oil Stadium. I wish they'd level it and turn it into a parking lot. It's like, this is kind of the industry of the city. I'm sorry that Nashville is appealing to young women who are getting married. Are you bitter about that? Does it bother you young women might be getting a ring and happiness? So she then tried to walk this back, but also didn't. It's weird. She got mad that people quoted her and posted the clip all over social media. And so she made a video about the video because this is now what you do in campaigns. Here she is just blatantly lying about things she says previously.
State Representative Aftyn Behn here, the Democratic nominee for the 7th Congressional Special Election in Tennessee. For those of you just joining in, I often record segments in my Jeep Wrangler called Wranglin' Time. Yes.
That is the gayest thing I have ever heard of.
Lesbianist.
And, I mean, first of all, you get a certain number of gay points for recording yourself in a Jeep Wrangler anyway. You might as well just record yourself in the mechanic shop. It would save you time. But also, you're nowhere near special enough to claim that recording yourself in your vehicle is special. Stop it.
I think the only 2 times that car has left the roadway have been accidents. That car has never been off-roading in that vehicle's entire life.
Well, we'll let her continue. She has some important wrangling time here for us.
There is a theme song, and no, I will not be singing it today. But yes, I will bring it back because I know a lot of you miss it, and you've said I sing well.
Slit my wrists.
So I look a little rough. I have bags under my eyes because the Republican eye of Sauron has finally shifted towards moi. And I'm sure you've seen the commercials. I'm sure you've seen the onslaught of ads. And then today, the Republicans decided that they're going to start this narrative that me, the state representative who represents downtown Nashville, doesn't like the city. Now, I always want Nashville to be better, right? I want Nashville to be a place where working people can thrive, right? But sure, I get mad at the Bachelorette sometimes. I get mad at the pedal taverns, right? And you're talking to someone who has cried no less than 10 times in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Stop it. She goes on to say, well, I never even said I didn't like Nashville. It's like, we have the audio. Stop it. It's embarrassing. Then when she was roasted over some real policy substantive stuff, she's talked about going out with her girls to harass law enforcement. She's talked about wanting, funding to be stripped from police departments, standard suburban liberal woman stuff, no understanding, just entitlement. She was pushed back on this on media. Her answer is incredible. Check it out.
Crime is, of course, also was a major issue in the presidential election. And I know there are some old posts. You've been asked about those old posts a number of times. My question for you today is whether more money for cops on the streets in the district you hope to represent would help fight crime. Would you like more money for more cops on the streets in your district?
Is she going to answer the question? Place your bets right now. I'm going to take a wild stab that she doesn't answer the question. Let's find out.
So those past comments were at a time when I was a private citizen.
I was a private citizen. Okay, well, let's see if she answers the question, though. We'll get back to the private citizen thing here in a second.
An activist and organizer, and now as a Tennessee lawmaker, I represent 40,000 individual opinions and political thought.
Right, so what do you think now? Would more money for cops be good or bad?
Answer the question, she said, slapping her back and forth in the face 5 times with a leather glove.
I think it depends on what the community wants. And so I've worked with communities, at least my constituents.
I don't have an opinion. I'm running for office. I'm not going to answer the question because all of the young socialists desperately want her to say that no money should go to funding the police. Now, I do love the private citizen comment. So we're going to have a little moment. We're going to have a little heart-to-heart here, a little moment here. About being a private citizen. If you go on social media and make posts anywhere on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, some random recipe website, just shouting onto random forums, you are putting your comments in the public domain. All of those weird posts you see people copying and pasting on Facebook, I don't give Facebook the permission to use my... You've already signed the terms and service of agreements. All of your data is out there. Once you put your comments on social media for the public, they become eligible for public scrutiny. Additionally, if you run for office, the crap that you did during your private life is considered experience for your public life. This is why you have people coming out and saying, oh, I was amazing. I did this. I did that. You don't get to just decide one day you're starting fresh and that you never did anything because it may look bad on your record. Honey, sweetie baby, you wrote the posts. You spoke the words. You recorded yourself during wrangling time. And so guess what? People wrangled your old posts and now you have to answer for them. So with 14 minutes and 30 seconds to go until the Tennessee polls close, we'll see how this election shakes out. Radio crew, we got to send you over to commercial. We're going to get over to Matt Van Epps over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, so Matt Van Epps with a pretty decent softball serve because Behn is such a walking nightmare. He serves it pretty easily when talking about why the election matters, what's important about it. Here you go.
I'm asking all Republicans and anyone who doesn't want a radical socialist in office to vote for us on December 2nd. And the distinction here could not be more clear. I'm a Christian, a husband, a father, an America First conservative, and a combat veteran. I was an Army helicopter pilot, worked in small business here in Nashville, served in Tennessee state government.
Yeah, but all that stuff happened while you were a private citizen. So I'm afraid that unless you recorded yourself doing some wrangling time, you're not qualified.
And still serving in the Tennessee Army National Guard. And we will win decisively on December 2nd when everybody puts their jersey on and gets on the field and stands behind us.
Now, that's a very good way to view an election. Everyone gets out there. Everyone votes. Everyone fights. No one quits. That's what I like to see. So we'll see how the election turns out here. Let's shift over to just a little bit more on the news side before we cut over to Payton McNabb, the young lady who went up against a horrible transgender athlete. We'll talk about that. Some really good story here in just a moment. But first, Zoran Mamdani, he's out striking in front of a Starbucks with Bernie Sanders. Look at this. Just some random Starbucks, just a bunch of angry young leftist white women. We don't like making coffee, even though we signed up to make coffee. Excellent. Yes, this is what you voted for, New Yorkers. Isn't it exciting?
I think Bernie's actually confused why he's there protesting. I think he was like upset about the mandatory tip that was on the
I thought
the
I was
register.
protesting the 15% on the iPad. They shove it in my face. They say, Bernie Sanders, you need to donate the money. He says, no,
They
I
didn't
am
let me say no.
I am the senator. You give money to me so I can buy another mansion. I don't tip you, the ugly lady at the counter.
Like, no. So they get out there and they yell and they scream. And then Mamdani gets out to suggest, I was really clear and firm with President Trump. Deporting people is bad, as though we're all going to forget that he went and like kissed Trump's ring a couple of weeks ago. Here's Zoran out there playing tough boy.
When I met with the president, I made very clear that these kinds of raids are cruel and inhumane, that they are raids that do nothing to serve the interests of public safety, and that my responsibility is to be the mayor to each and every person that calls this city their home. And that includes millions of immigrants, of which I am one.
Okay, that's real special. So this, and then of course the LGBTQ plus 2IA crowd that is still clinging very, very desperately, all the way from Aftyn Behn, all the way to Zoran Mamdani, all the way up to Minneapolis. This nonsense that men need to be treated like women whenever they want. It led into locker rooms, led on to the sports fields and courts. And for that, we're going to switch over to Payton McNabb. Excellent stuff here in just a moment. And then we'll bring that information out of Tennessee's election. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We'll be right back.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
We go over to Payton McNabb herself, the Independent Women's Forum ambassador, to talk a little bit about the importance that never seems to go away. This constant argument over whether men should be in women's sports at all. Payton, good to see you.
So good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Despite all of the chaos and the shenanigans and the nonsense and that just on the tech side of things, it's great to have you because when I was in college and playing volleyball and enjoying myself quite a bit on the court, there was one occasion where there were some high school girls who had come up to tour the college, and a couple of their girls played volleyball, and they asked if we could get into a match. And the response that we gave is no, because, two of our guys had pecs the size of grapefruits, and they were probably not going to be able to just loosen up when the game gets going. You know, you throw kind of a spike. You know of that firsthand. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what happens when precautions aren't taken in keeping guys out of women's sports?
Yes, absolutely. I went into it. It was my senior year. I was the starting setter and one of the team captains on the team. And I've been playing against this guy for 4 years at this point. He didn't hit puberty until about junior year, when guys usually tend to do so. And COVID kind of like took out with the other half of my whole high school. But so it wasn't really talked about. We didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know how to handle it. That's not something that we ever see. I'm from very rural North Carolina, and like I'd never even seen anything like that before. So I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to be as encouraging and as motivating as I possibly could for a really young team who was terrified to go up against this guy, because he was just, he hit it so hard, and no other girl could ever compare to how hard he was hitting it. They were just slamming down on the ground or on the court, and we had to practice differently in order just to prepare for this one guy. Like, not even the team, it was just him. And they knew it too. They knew he was the only reason that they were winning games. And it was proven in our records. We'd been playing, they were in our conference, so we couldn't not play them. And we've been playing them, my whole life. And we had always won conference, except for those 4 years. They won every single year. And that just proves like itself. But, I'm not a blocker. I'm pretty short, and I can't even touch the top of the net. So my job was to at least have one other person that could maybe even get a hand on this ball, because it was so quick and so hard. And for me to get the ball come at me, hit me in the face, knock me unconscious, cold for 30 seconds in a fencing position. So my body's all scrunched up. I'm not conscious. And my team is just mortified. My coaches are all surrounding me. And they had to continue the game. A freshman setter had to take my place after seeing what happened to me. And she was shaking and crying because she was so scared because she had to play. And of course I didn't take him out. So it's just like, and so many things, like obviously it's a lifelong injury that I've had to deal with. So many things came from it. But in that exact moment, I just could not believe that happened to me. Like, I had no time to react. It was the fastest ball I've ever seen in my life. And it completely changed my life forever, because, these people that are put in place to protect me and pass policies and laws and things that will ensure my safety and opportunity, they chose not to do that. And they didn't want to make a problem out of nothing. Well, they waited for a problem to permanently and forever change my life before they wanted to do something.
That's the key. And obviously, I've followed your story since it occurred. It made me furious. I was a former science teacher, and again, a guy who played, club volleyball in college. Nothing special, but it's very, when you see one of those guys with pecs the size of grapefruits, rocket spike volleyballs, you understand that it's not always something that you can just brush off. When you're in athletics, there are things that you treat very carefully, because, maybe 9 out of 10 times it won't be a problem, but that 10th time can alter someone's life forever. And again, you don't need me to tell you that. The audience doesn't need me to tell them that. But this is what infuriates me about this empathy model. This is one of the things I wanted to focus in with you, because I'm sure you hear just as much as the rest of us here how you need to be empathetic and understanding. And has anyone thought about like what the trans person thinks about playing sports? Probably never going to have any issues anyway. You're told that, right? It's like you're in a Disney movie and they're sitting down and the weird stepdad counselor who's like pathetic is trying to explain life to you because he has a degree from some off-brand Ivy League school. And he never seems to care that you got injured. Instead, what have I seen? I've seen officials from the left, for example, like Roy Cooper at North Carolina, not to mention a lot of other officials on the left side of the aisle, come after you for saying, I really would have appreciated living life without this significant brain injury, but none of you cared and you still don't. What do you think of this whole empathy model?
I just think it's a complete scam. I think you described it perfectly there. Yeah, I'm getting attacked. I just turned 20. I'm getting attacked by my former governor for saying, I would have really enjoyed to live my life as a normal 19, 20-year-old, but I can't now because of you and you choosing this guy's feelings and false reality over my feelings and my real reality and my safety and all of the things. Like, I've never understood that, and I never will, because how
it's so beyond the realm of common sense, right?
Exactly.
I mean, this is something that you can talk to any normal person on the street, not some high-strung, antidepressant medicated, like, single lady in her 50s. I'm talking like some like normal people that we talk to, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, people in the United States. Yeah, they get it. And it just, the gap is what bewilders me, because I'm here out of Indiana. I know that my company's in DC, but I'm not in the Beltway. I mean, our marketing producers from North Carolina, we're normal people, right? We don't understand this weird desire to be so empathetic that we're worshipped. And again, it's not real empathy, because again, when it comes to actually protecting women, nobody gave Payton their time. I mean, they didn't even take him out of the game after he committed this disgusting injury. It's the reason I have to say it over and over. It's so bewildering. It's like, if I just say it enough, my brain will understand why people did this. I can't wrap my mind around it.
No, and I thank God every day that I'll never be able to understand. Because I do not want to think that way.
That's a bold perspective. I thank God that I won't be able to understand, because if I would, then there'd be something really wrong with me. That's a hot take.
Yeah, I always stand by that, and I've said that from the beginning, because I never want to be like, I've tried to understand. I've talked to people all over the place. I have seen it over and over again, all kinds of different stories and in different ways, but I never want to be that person that actually thinks that way. Like, that's insane to me, and it's not real. And they don't actually think like that. Like, but it's just that they have to lie to themselves in order to feel better about themselves. Like, I'm not really sure what the end goal is, but it's all a lie.
So this is one of the things that I wanted to pivot to, and I didn't even send you the show notes. So way to go, anticipating where we're going here. There's a reel that I've seen too many times where a guy shows up to some kind of LGBTQ rally, and he goes up to a lady who's obviously a lady, and he says,
"Tell us about your transition, the difficulties, and how it went."
Transition? Like, what kind of transition?
Like, transition to, like, women, or, like, always being a woman, but, like, various things you did on that process and whatnot, or?
I've always been a woman.
100%, I agree.
It's also something you've had to, like, learn from women before you. Yeah. It's kind of, like, passed down. It's really beautiful.
Great. How did you become...
a woman?
Yeah, you are a woman, obviously. So, what's it been like? Are you still taking, or were hormones necessary, or are you naturally beautiful this way, or what?
Naturally, born a woman, am a woman, will always be a woman.
People know. They know that transgender, whatever, that's not really that person of that sex or gender. Get out of here.
No, yeah. And what's really hilarious to me is when they use that as an insult. Like, the other side will say, well, Megyn Kelly looks like a trans, and it's like, what does that mean? Like, don't y'all love the trans?
I thought that, the same thing with the on the LGB whatever side of things, when they say, well, I bet that Republican is secretly gay. It's like, wait a minute, I thought you were telling me this was supposed to be like the best, most amazing thing ever. Why are you using it as an insult?
Yeah, I thought gay was better. So, like, aren't you gay? Like, do you want to be gay? Like,
do you have something you need to talk about, Simon? Oh my goodness.
No, exactly.
So,
I'll never understand. It's insane.
The last thing I wanted to get your perspective on here, and I don't want to eat up all of your time, but this is deeply, deeply fascinating to me. When you're looking at how we go from here, right? In 2024, there was this major electoral shift. Obviously, the guys and girls sports issue rang out with voters. And there was this idea that Democrats were going to kind of kick to the side this issue and start admitting, I mean, you saw Gavin Newsom right after the election say, oh, yeah, well, maybe there is a difference between boys and girls. And you started seeing this across, some moderate Democrats might moderate a little bit on this one. Now they've gone all the way back. They have doubled down. We've obviously been covering the special election in Tennessee today. Behn, or whatever her name is obsessed with this issue. We've seen this in Virginia with Abigail Spanberger. What do you see from where you are? I mean, there's no more boots on the ground than someone who's dealt with this personally. Is this going to be something Democrats and the left are going to let go, or are they going to cling to it till the bitter end?
As long as they stay where they're at, which is clear that that's what they are determined to do, Republicans will continue to win elections because, like you were said, this was a huge like talking point for the election, the last election. And it was a major winning argument on the Republican side because it's just so like idiotic. And, you know, the majority of the American people are completely sick of it. And when you have Governor Newsom, who is just now being like what you said, oh yeah, maybe there's a difference between a man and woman. Obviously, like we all know that. And for you to say that after the fact, but it doesn't matter. Like you can say it, you were pressured into saying it. And if you don't actually do stuff to protect and change these sort of insane things that the women are having to go through, then it doesn't really matter what you say because there's no action behind it. And with the Republican side, there continues to be action and things being done. So I think that's a clear contrast between the two parties. I've seen it time and time again. I testified in front of the Doge Committee in front of Congress earlier this year. And I was there for 3 hours and I never got me nor Stephanie Turner, who was the fencing girl. We didn't get asked one question by the Democrats and we were there for 3 hours as a witness.
Chloe Coles described this to us before, that once you're actually there, no one wants to hear from those who have either detransitioned or been the victim of violence or, you know, guys in girls sports, things like that. No one ever wants to hear about the victims then. Believe all women, all of a sudden that kind of floats into the distance.
Yeah, all women, you know, that is something so interesting too, because being a girl's girl or whatever is all fine and well and believe all women until they're conservative or think differently from like this worldly view. And then they don't matter and they can shut up and not tell their story because it doesn't matter. And it's making a problem out of nothing. They belittled her sport. They belittled my injury that changed my life because of Democrat leaders like Roy Cooper who allowed that to happen to me. And it's just like, when I've seen them fail me over and over again, how are they ever going to expect me to vote for that party? Because they obviously don't care about my safety or my opportunity. And they've proven that time and time again. And I think that's how a majority of the country sees it.
I just, there are a million ways that my pundit brain is, trying to think of where I could take this, but I think we might have to leave it there for now. We'd love to have you back. Again, love your story, followed it ever since 2022. Obviously wish that you didn't have to deal with this, but your voice has been so important since. Payton McNabb, Independent Women's Forum, once again showing that they really do the best job of amplifying the best voices in this country. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
All right, now it is 8 o'clock. We are off of network air, so no more commercials this evening. We've got a couple very, very important things that we are going to need to tackle. First and foremost, it is now 4 minutes after 8 p.m. We will be bringing you the election results from the Tennessee Special Election for the Tennessee 7th as they roll in. Additionally, we have some new updates on the Minnesota situation and what is appearing to turn into a standoff with ICE. From Attorney General Keith Ellison in Minnesota, quote, Donald Trump's disgraceful attacks on Minnesota's Somali community are injecting more of his poisonous racism into our beloved home state. Hearing him single out our people, the ones over 70 of whom were just arrested for $1 billion in fraud and who hold massive rallies speaking Somali, announcing their loyalty to Somalia first and not the United States. Hearing him single out our people based solely on their race and country of origin, not the massive amounts of fraud and higher number of rapes per 100,000 than any major city in the United States, or, also the massive amount of financial fraud and potential terrorist activity. It's their race and their country of origin. Keith Ellison calls it downright disgusting. We Minnesotans know the truth. Our Somali and East African neighbors are by our bedsides caring for us when we're sick. Here we go. If there could just be one Democrat who doesn't treat anyone who is black or brown as though they're the help, as though they are the cheap slave labor. They're by our bedsides and they're cleaning our hotels. They're growing our economy and contributing to our common prosperity every day. They're a big part of what makes Minnesota, this other nonsense. He also calls for Minnesotans to stand up for their neighbors when they're under attack, and then promises to use every tool he has to protect our vibrant Somali community from dangerous racist threats. So Keith Ellison out there doing some interesting stuff. Also, Tom Homan, now border czar, has responded to the Minneapolis police chief who has said he would intervene against ICE. Here's Tom Homan's response to that.
Look, I'll say the same thing I said to other chiefs of police in sanctuary cities. Shame on you. I mean, your number one responsibility is the safety and security of your communities. And ICE is targeting criminals. So for you not to partner with ICE to make your community safer is shameful. He ought to put his badge in the desk drawer and walk away, because he stopped being a cop, become a politician. If a true law enforcement official would work with ICE, okay, look, I don't want to be an immigration officer. I'll leave that to you guys. But when we have an illegal alien public safety threat in the community, I want to be shoulder to shoulder with you. I want to help you make my community safer, because the chief of police, that's my number one responsibility.
All right, so we're going to move from there to some of the other big news from the day. There are some in this little bonus tonus segment, the good, the bad, and the awkward. We do have a team that is watching the Tennessee election results. Again, just kind of looking at the Associated Press and the Decision Desk headquarters. Those are usually kind of our hybrid calling system. We'll keep you guys posted when that's officially called. With 2% of the votes counted in, it's like 2,000 votes to 697 in favor of Matt Van Epps. Again, we'll keep you posted as things run in. A couple of great things today. One of those is from Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, an underappreciated member of the cabinet, I'll say, in the cabinet meeting today, announcing that all of the states in the United States who refuse to give information on SNAP beneficiaries, who refuse to give information on how they are spending federal dollars on programs like SNAP, those states will not be receiving funding. Because if you don't provide the accountability to Congress and to the president, then no, you don't get the money. Again, you're not owed this amount of funds. The Congressional Auditing Team is in fact allowed to look over how you are spending federal dollars. Here was Brooke Rollins on that today.
We had a couple of people receiving benefits in 6 states. In February of this year, we asked for all the states for the first time to turn over their data to the federal government, to let the USDA partner with them to root out this fraud, to make sure that those who really need food stamps are getting them, but also to ensure that the American taxpayer is protected. 21 states said yes, not surprised. 29 states said yes, not surprisingly, the red states, and that's where all of that data, that fraud comes from. But 21 states, including California, New York, and Minnesota, the blue states, continue to say no. So as of next week, we have begun and will begin to stop moving federal funds into those states until they comply and they tell us and allow us to partner with them to root out this fraud and to protect the American taxpayer.
Now, that's a very big deal. Obviously, the 22 states right now that are refusing to send SNAP data, 21 of the 22 have Democrat governors. So I'll just read those off real quick. Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Washington, and Wisconsin. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a little suspicious given the massive amounts of fraud that have been uncovered, but such is par for the course. Producer Nick?
When we see these states, so the theme of the show today is fraud. And more importantly, when we're looking at this election, the people that push these fraudulent schemes, these community leaders that are bringing in large swaths of foreign individuals to then earn Social Security numbers illegally so that they're able then to vote. What's the motivation? I saw somebody in chat question this. You have people like Tim Walz whose response to seeing large amounts of fraud turn around and say, let's open up another program to give money to our community, quote unquote.
Now, but one of the comments, Denise Jensen says, a little suspicious. That's my sarcasm. It's incredibly suspicious. Of course it is. Now, Brooke Rollins, there will, of course, be lawsuits galore that come out here, and this is going to end up in discovery one way or the other. This data will be released to the American people. It will likely, given what we know already, be just as bad as you're assuming it is. Now, the Trump administration also had a bit of a boo-boo today in the cabinet meeting. The president said that the affordability narrative that the Democrats are currently running with, that's a hoax. Here was the president saying that today.
But our prices now for energy, but for gasoline are really low. Electricity's coming down. And when that comes down, everything comes down. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam.
Now, by the way, even though the Democrats are running with this and they're going to try to clip and quote and say Trump doesn't care about affordability, he thinks the whole issue is a scam and a hoax. That's not true. Not what he said. Does it look particularly good? No, but what is Trump saying right here? He says the Democrats making affordability their big thing. That's a scam. They've never made anything more affordable ever whatsoever at all. And the prices on a lot of goods, all the way from gas to grocery prices, is going down. It is. I mean, so you can understand the president's frustration here. Producer Nick?
I'd argue that the way that the media is looking at this comment that he made is similar to how they look at earlier comments, such as with the Epstein files. When he says a term is a scam, the Epstein files are a scam.
Them running with this is the narrative.
The narrative
like this.
that the Democrats are pushing is a scam. The narrative that the Democrats are currently pushing about affordability in America is a scam. That's what he's saying, similar to the Epstein files that the Democrats were pushing and saying that Trump was the one preventing the Epstein files from being released. That was the scam that he was referencing, not the files themselves.
To be clear, nothing here, this isn't 3D or 4D chess trying to explain away the president. He speaks the exact same way about everything. This doesn't require mental gymnastics. He's very clearly aggravated that this has been used as a bludgeon. Now, by the way, there are some affordability issues in the United States. There are some significant issues. For example, even though gasoline is down in a lot of localities, electricity prices are a little higher than a lot of people would appreciate. But that's not due to federal policy in its entirety. And that also deserves to be said. But I'll let the president finish his statement here before we conclude this one.
They say it, and then they go into the next subject. And everyone thinks, oh, they had lower prices. No, they had the worst inflation in the history of our country.
So the Democrats are going to try to run that, oh, Trump said that affordability, that's a hoax. No, what Trump is pointing out is the hypocrisy. Prices are, in fact, going down in this administration. They are. By the metric data, we do have prices currently going down. And on the flip side, during the Biden years, prices were higher. So it does frustrate the president because, as many of the cabinet pointed out quite clearly, yes, there are a lot of measures being taken to reduce the strain on those participating in the American economy. So that all said, I want to move over to just the plain awkward, because the plain awkward is just pathetic, and then a little bit of Franklin goodness. I'm really excited to share that with you. But George Conway is losing it. The left-leaning punditry class, the openly leftist punditry class is melting down in just unbroken swaths all over the country. George losing it.
I mean, the most important thing is we have a president who is not a criminal. That is the absolutely most important thing. Other than that, I think what we have to do is figure out what safeguards. And I think this is really, really important for people who are going to be in Congress over the next 2 to 4 years. And I've been thinking about that a lot for some reason. First of all, there has to be accountability of this administration and the bad actors around it. CEG, this whole Witkoff thing. I mean, what the hell? And then there has to be kind of a Reconstruction era.
Reconstruction era. Democrats talking about what they want to do post-Trump gets really, really Orwellian really quickly. Let's listen to his description of what post-Trump should look like.
And this is a critical part of the Reconstruction program that lawyers are going to have to figure out mechanisms that are constitutional and draft statutes that prevent some of this shit from ever happening again, including, electing a crazy president. So
his argument is that we need a bunch of lawyers and I guess legislation, statutes, he says. So statutes can mean laws, but he also wants there to be bureaucratic rules put in place, Supreme Court rulings, allegedly here, that would prevent, Republicans from running for future office? We're going to start putting subjective claims on who you do and don't want to run for the White House? That gets pretty sketchy. Now, we'll talk about James Comey and Letitia James getting ready to face future indictments here pretty soon. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, as we're watching some of the election information in Tennessee roll through, it's a little bit closer, perhaps, than Republicans would appreciate, but also a little bit closer in the wrong direction for Democrats who were hoping this would be another special election blowout. Again, we'll talk about all of that in a minute. You may recall this particular beautiful artwork, this AI-generated Franklin's Children book cover that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth posted. Franklin targets narco-terrorists. And it broke. And I mean it broke. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, who's trying to clutch all of the pearls in the world right now about the Department of War over this. It's just broken. This is a sad shell of a man. Look at this.
He's putting out on the internet turtles with rocket-propelled grenades. Have you seen this? This is the Secretary of Defense. This is not a serious person. He should have been fired after Signalgate.
I love it. I love it so much. So people then started making lots of Franklin memes because, of course, the publisher of Franklin, Kids Can Press, had to release a statement. No one was asking him to. It's a meme. Calm down. They didn't calm down. They posted the most pearl-clutching statement I have heard to this day. Get ready. Ahem. Franklin the Turtle is a beloved Canadian icon who has inspired generations of children and stands for kindness, empathy, and inclusivity. Ah, yes, the three things turtles are known for. Their kindness, empathy, and inclusivity. Anyway, we strongly condemn any denigrating, violent, or unauthorized use of Franklin's name or image, which directly contradicts these values. Franklin. Beautiful, beautiful. So then the internet did the very best thing that it can. It delivered. I mean, it delivered like the pizza had to be there in 30 minutes or less. Beautifully. And you out there, the wonderful audience who chooses for some reason to tune in to the Tony Kinnett Cast, you sent in some of the most incredible Franklin memes that have been posted. Now, I'm going to level for the podcast crew. Those who are just listening to the show, I don't think I'm going to be able to describe every one of these artfully for the blind. I'm sorry. What you need to do, you need to go to youtube.com or rumble.com. You need to head to the Daily Signals page. You need to watch this section of the show. It's just that good. While we wait for some of the election results to come in. We so far, in terms of the Tennessee election, by the way, we don't have any of the data from Davidson precinct where Nashville is. 25% of the votes have been counted at this point. Currently, Matt Van Epps is up 24,000 to Aftyn Behn's 17,330. Reportedly, 0 of which are bachelorette votes. So we'll have to keep that in so we can hear any tears from the Country Music Hall of Fame that I guarantee you she hasn't spent as much time in as she's claiming, saying that she's despised country music a couple of years ago.
She really messed up by not going around peddling a pedal bar for the people.
I thought she should have eaten rice with her hands. Clearly, if there's one thing that can win an election, it's either
the core of Nashville, known for their hand foods.
Marrying your brother, a great way maybe to win in Minnesota, or hot take here, eat some rice with your hands and maybe go shirtless in an apron as a rapper. Again, really great takes. I'm amazed that we didn't get there on the political campaign. Maybe next time. All right. You guys sent in some of the best Franklin memes I've truly seen. First of all, Franklin makes a meme. And it's just Franklin making the particular meme. This particular one ratioed the official Kids Can Press Goober account. This embarrassed them so much they had to lock the tweet. Beautiful, beautiful start here. Then we have Franklin calls ICE on people who don't belong. Very well done. I like it. It's a good one. Franklin. Oh, sorry. Producer Daniel is correcting me. It's Davidson County, not precinct. Sorry. Thanks for the correction there, Producer Daniel. Sorry, this is Franklin learns about George Floyd's autopsy. A great one. Franklin the Turtle has a strange teacher. Not a bad one. This was sent in. I like this one. It's a good one. Franklin prints a ghost gun. I as an owner of a 3D printer, I think learning to weld is probably more important. And I mean, I'm not joking. I'm not like the journalist, learn to code, learn to weld. I mean, really, like, learn to, if you want to print 3D ghost guns, learn to weld and start producing Sten Mark II automatic submachine guns. That's what I've done.
So far, Franklin seems to be a Renaissance man. He just does it all.
I mean, again, Franklin's printing ghost guns. I'm all here for it. So that's good stuff. Then we have Franklin grows tired of immigrants and their behavior. It's a bunch of bears in turbans and then a fox in a sombrero. Oh, I look forward to the emails we're going to get on this one. It's like, I'm a bear in a turban. How dare you? All right. Then we have a darker one. Franklin the Turtle visits China, and it's a shell because the people are eating turtle soup. Have you ever had turtle soup?
No, I have not.
It's pretty good.
The closest thing I can say is I've had frog legs.
Frog legs are delicious. The best part, chicken legs that taste like lobster. Oh, it's incredible stuff. Okay, we do have a breaking update at this time. Producer Lou has announced Fox News is now calling Maricopa County in Arizona for Aftyn Behn. So, excellent stuff. Sorry, old jokes never die. All right, next up, Franklin stands with Sydney Sweeney. I like it. Not wearing her jeans in that one. I'm just glad. He's also carrying a flamethrower, which I'm also here for. Franklin learns about crime statistics. Another good one. Franklin joins ICE, and just Franklin in the ICE get up and arresting people, getting ready to deport them down at the border. Really good stuff. Franklin tells his classmates about George Soros.
The shock on the students' faces.
Beautiful. Franklin realizes the Crusades were justified. Amen. Wholeheartedly agree. Beautiful stuff. Then we've got Franklin throws up in his mouth a little. He's reading a newspaper titled Ilhan Omar married her brother. Franklin defends the library from all of the Rainbow Crews. I do like the grenade launcher on the M4. That's a nice touch.
Crowd control.
I like that. Then Franklin explains what Fauci deserves. he's pointing to a bunch of like Chinese and medieval.
This one ironically makes a lot of sense considering what Fauci has done to the beagles.
Oh, yeah. I gotta say, I like the not the coffin, the sarcophagus, the spiky sarcophagus.
Iron Maiden.
The what?
Iron Maiden.
The Iron Maiden. Yeah. Look at you with all of the horror and torture equipment. Good on you, producer Nick. Then we have a lower quality Franklin, but still pretty good. Franklin in a B-2 bomber says, Franklin destroys Iran's nuclear capabilities. I like it. That's a good one. This one's sent in. Franklin the Turtle visits Portland, and he's got bruises. That's real sad. Usually they're really nice to Canadians in Portland, so that's real rough. Franklin commits Candace, and there's like an asylum behind it. Oof, that's a good one. Then Franklin arrests the traitors, and this looks like James Comey and Hillary Clinton. He's in full police garb. I like that. Eh? Franklin annexes Canada, and then it's a Canadian flag with the 51st state on it. Given that he's Canadian, I gotta say that one gets the honorable mention. Last but not least, Franklin gets falsely accused of war crimes.
In good company with Pete.
Just for those who have sent in some of these beautiful, beautiful Franklin memes, we really appreciate it. I got to say, you can head down to the link in the description, Discord. Heading down to our Discord link, you can join us. Send in your worst Franklin memes or anything else, to be honest with you. We love getting messages from the excellent crew over here at the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, right now, the Polymarket odds suggest that the Van Epps campaign is likely to win by a 0 to 5% margin. 57% of the Polymarket betting market suggest it's going to be Van Epps by 0 to 5%. And you know how much I really don't particularly care for, just saying betting market stuff as a polling. But Polymarket's polls are pretty interesting, I think. They've got some good stuff there. Only 25% of the vote is still in. No one has yet reported for Nashville. So we're going to keep up with that. We have some more news to get to. Don't you worry, folks. We've got a little bit more on the news side, and we'll keep you updated on Tennessee as well. Don't go anywhere. A lot of bonus tonus tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. A great Tuesday, as always, to be joined by Stephen Kent for a little Whatcha Watchin'. Stephen Kent, of course, of the Consumer Choice Center and Geeky Stoics. My man, you have been watching all kinds of good stuff, so you say, that has been running rampant in various circles. Tell me about this Freerin thing, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right. So this is a show I am passionate about, so passionate. I have watched it twice in the past month, all 28 episodes. This is, I'm sorry, folks, a Japanese anime on Netflix that debuted in 2024 initially, but it is now really starting to ramp up because its second season debuts at the beginning of 2026. And this show shocked and surprised me. It has also become very popular in Christian commentator circles because it is the story of an elven mage who is hunting demons across this land and working to wipe them out. And the kingdom that this elf is in has been beset by sort of an empathy problem with the demons. The demons present themselves as humans, and so humans don't know how to deal with them because they look like them, they talk like them, they say nice words like they have mothers, fathers, and children, and they don't know how to respond. But this elf, who has been around for 1,000 years, knows exactly what these demons are and how to deal with them and what must be done. It's a very stoic show. It's relaxing. It feels very much like a Studio Ghibli film. It's sort of restrained. It's not very loud and in your face. The show also feels very much like a Japanese anime take on Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. It's 4 characters, a dwarf, a knight, a priest, and an elf traveling across the countryside, taking long walks, doing side quests in little villages. And
You're
then,
right, that is very Tolkien-esque. I like it.
And then destroying evil when it presents itself. There's so much to love about this show. So I'll stop there and get your reaction. But Freerin Beyond Journey's End has absolutely captivated my family.
I've needed something relaxing to watch and just kind of sit back and enjoy, mainly because I have now run out of videos from my favorite thing to watch when I'm relaxing, which is called My Mechanics over on YouTube. It is a Swiss engineer craftsman who restores all of these old destroyed pieces of equipment. And I know that it sounds perhaps very boring to watch someone restore things, but the way that he does so is a standard above anyone else out there in the world who restores anything. I mean, old lamps and lanterns, pieces of industrial equipment, a car. He's like restoring a car piece by tiny piece. The filmography, the cinematography of it is excellent. And also the love and care that he puts into the work. I've just finished all of his stuff because he's still in the middle of this car restoration that's taking a very long time. Freerin might be the way to scratch the itch. At the end of the night, finish Tony Kinnett Cast. I finished Top News in 10. I need to wind down. And so Freerin might be the way to do that. You also, I'm told, are obsessed with Stranger Things. What is it, season 5? I know it's an Indiana show, but I've never watched a shred of it at all.
Really? I'm stunned that you've been able to avoid it. Now, I would not call myself obsessed with Stranger Things. I would say that I continue to tolerate it because it did have its boom time. I mean, this show at this point, it began like 8 years ago. This has been a long time running. It almost feels like trying to keep up with The Walking Dead. But at the end of the day, this is only season 5 of Stranger Things. They were obstructed both by the pandemic and then the Hollywood strike, the writer's strike, shut down much of the production of Stranger Things 5. And so in the interim between the last season, the kid actors are now all in their 20s. They grew up. And, Millie Bobby Brown, who plays the psychic girl known as 11, she's a full-grown adult with plastic surgery done to her face, and she's still playing a 15-year-old on the show. It's a little weird, but season 5 is out. The first 4 episodes are streaming on Netflix, and I will say that it is fine. It's a fine show. It's 80s nostalgia brimming from top to bottom. The action is interesting, but I can't shake the feeling, Tony, that special effects matured for a handful of years, kind of like back in the 2000s, right? Like George Lucas advanced special effects really far, but then it went backwards as budgets for movies started getting cut. And so CGI got better and then it got worse. And Stranger Things is suffering from this exact same thing. The special effects when the show began 8 years ago were excellent. Now they kind of are awful. And I'm not sure what to attribute to that besides laziness on the part of making this show or budgets in Hollywood just being really constrained in the streaming era.
I'm going to add one on to the top of that and call it scope creep. So one of the things that I've noticed, so as you know, I for some reason enjoy watching commentaries on how certain decisions were made in like the broad scope of writing and shooting, things like major sitcoms that were very popular. The commentary for me has become more fascinating than the sitcoms themselves. And something that I've heard, because occasionally you'll have producers and writers and directors, for example, after Matthew Perry died, who played Chandler Bing in Friends, a couple of the producers and writers of the show Friends came back out to talk a little bit about how certain things were shot on the show, partly as a tribute to some of the excellent acting and writing that took place during the filming of Friends. But one of the things that and I can't remember the producer's name that harped on this, was talking about how we had 3 cameras. We had 3 cameras, and these 3 cameras were essentially always in the same place, which meant that every single scene that you wrote was going to be shot with 3 angles of shot, and then maybe a little bit of close up, very little though. In fact, oftentimes they wouldn't even do any special focus for it. And it made cutting the episodes kind of easy. It meant that, you had to do some set design, but also a lot of things in the show were taking place with just these 3 basic camera angles, which meant you could pump out 5, 6, 7 episodes. Every couple of weeks.
That's incredible from a logistical standpoint. And it just tells you a whole lot about how television and stories used to be told, and Friends and just those sitcoms that take place on one studio set of an apartment or a house.
Family Matters is an excellent example, or the Cosby Show, of that one house, 3 or 4 rooms on a large rotating soundstage.
Yeah, it's just real life, and people connect more with the life and the world that they recognize, whether it's Malcolm in the Middle and just that one house that is in that entire show, or it's these stage sitcoms. There's a wonderful analysis circulating on YouTube right now about how bad the new Scarlett Johansson Jurassic Park movie is. And part of what goes wrong in that movie, besides that it's just mostly AI generated CGI slop, is that the movie is shot like the portrait mode on your iPhone. So everything in the background is blurred. And it's interesting that in the era of the iPhone, we sort of have all adapted the cinematic mode of making movies and taking photos where the background is blurred and the front is in full focus. The original Jurassic Park movies, it looked like a real place. It was an island. It was a place that you could imagine being stranded on or going to. The new Jurassic Park.
The shooting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so the new Jurassic Park, when you can see the environment that Scarlett Johansson is in, it's unworldly. It does not look like planet Earth. There's no natural structures. It's all completely computer generated. And when you can't see it, it's not in focus. It's just in the background. And it's completely changes the character of a Jurassic Park movie for the worse.
There's a really interesting bit of analysis that I think is pretty on point that's been said over the last couple of years, that mankind gets dizzy when seeing from the eye of God. And I think that it's a very curious remark, because think of the way that a lot of movies and TV shows now are shot. I think about this with Stranger Things. I think about this with the new Jurassic Park stuff. In the ones that Chris Pratt was in, I actually tried to sit down and watch a little of it, and the camera angles were everywhere. I mean, they were coming in from sky down to earth, and then these broad, like very quickly moving, expansive shots. Very little was shot like the original Jurassic Park, which was shot from either helicopter level overview or from the perspective of the individual. Like you could imagine someone standing on a rock and filming the scene, or someone inside the Jeep filming the scene. It's that personal perspective that I think, first of all, it makes it easier to cut, because you're not asking a series of editors to cut all of these wild angles and glue them together at a moment's notice. That's one of the reasons that these series, it takes them so long to produce a season. You talk about Stranger Things, how many years it's taken them to produce a new series of a show. Some of the writers for Sherlock with BBC talked about this. He said they said that the angles and the writing and the effects were so overbearing that it was just too much work to keep everyone together and have this major editing budget of getting all of this churned out as quickly as possible, because they're shooting TV shows like Marvel movies in the mid-2010s. You can't do that. But also, I think there's some fatigue from it. It's exhausting to watch those shows. And what do we start out the segment talking about? Look, I'm a man. I just want to unwind and relax at the end of my day. Come on. Why are you taking me through all these camera angles? I'm tired, man. I'm tired.
Yeah, I just want to watch a human story. And I guess going back again, like you said, to where we began, the most human story that really just follows the experience of people, the quiet, mundane moments, the long walks, just the muted conversations between friends. You'll find that in Frieren, Beyond Journey's End on Netflix. I just can't recommend it enough for a show that, even though you're dealing with an elf, of course, you learn a lot about what it means to be a human being and the evil forces that exist in the world that we want to see stopped. So that's what we're watching this week.
Dang it, Steven, you've convinced me to watch it. Now I'm actually looking forward to relaxing. I'm going to enjoy it. And with that, we might have to leave some of the new stuff from the Studio A24 for next week, because I'll tease it with this. Some feuds will haunt you. Watch the trailer for Mother Mary, a psychosexual pop thriller. Slit my wrists.
I want out. I don't want any part to do with it. I'll take the Japanese language dub of Frieren.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Kent, Geeky Stoics, and of course his excellent economic takes over from the Consumer Choice Center. Not in this Watch a Watchin' segment, but a part of his excellent repertoire as well. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, let's dig into a little bit of the breaking news of the hour here. We've got some big information to tackle. Let's hop right to it. So in the 7th District, Tennessee Congressional Special Election, all right, we have currently got 42% of the vote counted by the Associated Press. Aftyn Behn is now in the lead, 37,500, down to Matt Van Epps at 32,500. So why all of the big changes all of the sudden here? Well, here we go. We have a lot of information coming out of Davidson County. That's downtown Nashville. Right now, 50% of the vote counted, heavily in favor of Aftyn, 17,500 to Matt Van Epps, 3,000. That's in Davidson County. Here's what to watch, though. Montgomery County, all right, that's the northern middle county of the 7th Congressional. Montgomery County right now is currently in a very bizarre place because in 2024, it went lightly to President Trump. All right, Republicans are often known for shifting to the presidential election turnout, usually favorable. That shifted to Trump slightly in 2024. Right now, Aftyn is leading in Montgomery County, 9,700 votes to Matt Van Epps, 9,000 votes. By the way, if you're watching on the live stream right now, yeah, we have the live stream up, or the live chat for the stream up. We're trying to keep the chat up on the screen a little bit more during the show. So no, that's not a bug, that's a feature. So let's dig into where we're headed from here, because what we've got is a very different set of electoral data right now from the Tennessee Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, over on elections.tn.gov. According to that website's data right now, the Aftyn Behn vote total is 37.7 thousand to Matt Van Epps, the Republicans, 33.2 thousand. Now, that's different right now than what we have coming in from the decision desk. Associated Press is reporting slightly more votes counted in, kind of in a different way. We're keeping an eye on this one at the moment. So right now, we're going to answer a couple of questions for mail time as they come in while we're waiting for the election to be called. It's getting a lot closer than some people were hoping for in the Tennessee 7th Congressional, which, by the way, went to Trump by 20 points. So if you're looking at a bellwether headed into midterms for 2026, this is probably the best argument you're going to get for a core bellwether, this special election right now. And then, of course, what follows to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene with that special election, as well as in New York later in the year. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. First question for the evening. On Polymarket, real quick. Van Epps, percent chance of winning 0 to 5%. Is it a 69% chance? As a millennial, I am legally required to say nice. So, sorry, back to some of the mail time questions. First of all, from Rumble user Ebola. Did Tony just admit to playing college volleyball? Yeah, I was a fraternity president. And so that meant playing in the sports that were, the fraternity sports, the intramurals. And that meant, playing volleyball, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it. I was good. I mean, probably the favorite intramural sport being volleyball, or not volleyball, a dodgeball. Dodgeball is just, you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. That speaks very dearly to my heart. And so, those are two that I probably enjoyed the most. Absolutely played volleyball in college. Not like on the school team. We had a club team, and then the fraternities played, and then, of course, the sororities played. But, you caught me. I did, in fact, play college volleyball on the men's team for our frat. So your hand is like hovering near the microphone button. Did you have something to add? It worries me. Okay, good. Okay. Another question coming in from the Johns. I like that. He asks, if Tennessee ends up losing this election for the Republicans, what does this mean? Well, it means that right now, Republicans are having a very, very hard time getting people out to the polls, which means that Republicans would basically have a sync problem. A sync problem in elections is when your party only wants to come out for the big ones. And the Democrats had this issue right around 2012. It really started to kick in for them, where once the Democrats made it clear that local elections didn't matter, all that mattered was the presidential. They made everything a hugely nationalized issue. A lot of Democrats started only coming out or sending in ballots during the presidential election season, which means that if you weren't on the ballot in the presidential elections, then, well, then it was likely Republicans were going to come in and kneecap you because Republicans were these high propensity voters. Now that has flipped is a lot of the populist voters have left the Democrat Party, people who, again, rely on emotional popularism, that'd be populism. Now going over to the Republican Party means that emotion drives turnout. And here we have another campaign, yet another election, in which the entire theme of the vote was, I'm not Aftyn Behn. And that is what Matt Van Epps came out to say. Now, he had a lot of really great proposals, but in the last couple of weeks of the election, so much of the coverage was, look how awful Aftyn Behn is, that there's a real question that needs to be asked. Was there enough of a push to get Matt Van Epps to be a really great polling guy? And the polls didn't look super throughout most of the campaign. But that said, want to keep on moving here. Again, you can throw mail time questions if you have any over in the chat. Great question from Gene Smith 3200. She says, so why would the people of Nashville vote for someone who hates it? The answer to that appears to be that those on the left really don't care what their candidates say or think or do. They're on the left. Vote blue no matter who. When Trump is in office is a very big powerhouse mechanic for all of these people faking empathy. That's what we were talking about with, say again?
Jay Jones in Virginia. Excellent example. But we were just talking about this with Payton McNabb. When the other side has claimed empathy, and so it doesn't matter what their people say because they'll just say, well, but they were really mean in favor of the oppressed, in favor of the brown people, whatever that means, in favor of the trans people, whatever that means, in favor of whomever. Yeah, they can get out and say they hate you. They'll throw you in prison. They'll throw you in a concentration camp. Doesn't matter. That's what they stand for. It doesn't matter. They're blue. They're Democrat. You are told by the Democrats that they're empathetic. And so why not believe them after all? If you vote for them, then you become empathetic and wonderful. And you're allowed to be, praised and told that you are super duper. Right now, still only have 44% of the votes counted. It appears as some of these start to chunk in, it looks like Nashville just kind of dropped right away. Looks like maybe a little bit of early voting. I'm not sure how long the early voting or the mail-in voting or the absentee voting for Tennessee lasts. Could you look that up for me, producer Nick, here, just for a second?
Pull it up, Jamie.
Pull it up, Jamie, as it were. It appears that Robertson County, the northeastern county in the 7th, is going to Matt Van Epps at a ratio of 2-1. And yeah, Nashville's only dropped 50% of the expected, but that was a pretty heavy chunk right away. That's why I want to know what the mail-in is. If that's just a kind of a pre-mail count or an absentee count right away, that would, that'd be pretty prescient right away. From producer Nick, prior to most elections, we offer multiple locations across the country where Davidson County voters may cast their ballots early. Early voting period begins 20 days before an election and typically ends 5 days before election day. And some voting sites are not only open during the day, but some evenings and on Saturday. Exciting stuff there. It looks like some of the pre-count came in. Again, my eyes right now are on Montgomery County, the middle northern county, as it were. Do we actually have the election map up in 2024? Yes, we do. Here you go. In 2024, here's how the counties went. You can see in the top middle there with, what was it, Clarksville, Tennessee. That top middle county there, that's Montgomery. It went to Trump lightly in the 2024 presidential. Right now, with 49% of the votes counted, Aftyn Behn, the Democrat, is leading Matt Van Epps 9,700 to about 9,200. And other candidates have squirreled away about 254 votes because, some candidate's mom has to vote, some way. And according to Tennessee state law, thanks for this little bit of bonus tip as well here, also answering a mail time question from Kayla. Tennesseans may vote early or on election day, but you have to bring a valid photo ID with you to the polls. A driver's license or photo ID issued by the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, by Tennessee state government, or by the federal government. They're acceptable even if they're expired. Interesting. College student IDs are not acceptable. Oh, I see that Poker John also asked the question. Well, there you go. Kayla, Poker John. That's the answer on the Tennessee voting ID at the moment. So I want to point out the special election frame here real quick. So Democrats have done well in 2025 special elections so far, as according to the New York Times. This is just their rough framing of the data here. They've pointed out that the margins of the vote in 2024 have gone over towards the blue. For example, the Florida 1 congressional swung back 23 points toward the Dems. Now, that's not in gross votes, because there were a certain number of people that came out and voted in Florida's first congressional back in April. Not a very low turnout election, because special elections are low turnout elections. 23 points back towards the left, but a Republican obviously still won. In Florida's 6th, 16 points to the left. In Virginia's 11th on September the 9th, 16 points to the left, a blue to a blue. And then Arizona's 7th. This is the lady who came in and then cried about Epstein when she was being sworn in. This is 17 points to the left. So they're trying to do a little bit of graph expectancy and say, well, maybe the entire country is shifting 16 to 20 points to the left in elections right now. Maybe that's the catch here. Maybe that's where the predictive analysis, the pattern recognition can come into play. I'd be careful about that. The reason I'm saying that I would be careful about that, at least in detail here, lower turnout elections, you have different amounts of people depending on the congressional district and the amount of money spent by the congressional campaigns that are going to come out to vote in different special elections. A special election that's happening in April or September is going to have a lot more people than one in November or December. It's colder. Weather might be yuckier. That matters in these low turnout elections. It does. Again, the American people have an issue where unlimited sovereign voting franchise, everyone who here is a legal resident, is a citizen of the United States, you get a vote, whether you know anything about politics or nothing at all, which means that then it becomes less about arguing your point to the voters, and it just becomes who can get more of their team out to vote, which, as the country diverges ideologically, becomes a more significant issue. Because then it becomes a kind of a brawl NFL game. It turns from the NFL into the NHL. Becomes less of a cheering match and more of a brutal fight out on the rink. So right now, the decision desk has updated their information, and so has the Tennessee Department of State. Boys and girls, this is a close one. Aftyn Behn is currently leading 45,131 to Matt Van Epps 45,010. This is a dead heat election. The decision desk has updated their data to show this as well, which suggests to me that I think the decision desk is watching primarily not county returns, but they're going straight to the Tennessee State Department for their information. That's just a little tidbit for those of you who autistically care too much about these kinds of things. I don't know, maybe your mom took a little too much Tylenol. Now you're really excited about where electoral data comes from. This appears to be where the decision desk is getting theirs. That's speculation, by the way. My mom took a little bit of Tylenol when she was pregnant with me too. All right, let's look over at some of the electoral map information. So if we pull open the first map here again, if you look down at Williamson County, that is the county that encapsulates Franklin, Tennessee. That weird little wedge that juts up into Franklin. Right now, it appears that there's a larger turnout than maybe was previously expected. It went more to Trump than Montgomery County with Clarksville up at the top did in 2024. But it appears right now Matt Van Epps is leading Aftyn by about 2,000 votes there. Now the Associated Press is reporting that Matt Van Epps has actually taken the lead 46,715 to 46,456. I have no idea where the AP is getting their numbers at all. No idea whatsoever. David Mascura, is that where Franklin the Turtle is from? No, unfortunately, he's Canadian. That's why he's not strapped 24/7 with a Glock, because he's Canadian. He's probably strapped with an apology, some maple syrup, and seasonal depression. All right. Oh, a good question over from Judy Luthi, member of the channel. You guys don't have to become members of the channel. By the way, you certainly don't have to. You don't have to join the Discord, even though we are like 2 people away from a major milestone on the Discord. You should join our Discord down, a link in the description. But Judy has an excellent question. It says, weren't Democrats responsible for the first Reconstruction era after the Civil War? And how did that turn out for us? No, the Democrats were not responsible for the first Reconstruction era. That was Ulysses S. Grant. And that was a contentious time. Reconstruction really didn't work in the country. And the reason I say it really didn't work in the country is, yeah, the 14th Amendment had to be ratified in order for states to rejoin the Union and leave their military districts. But as soon as the 14th Amendment passed, then a bunch of states in the South then went and created alternative laws that were worded very differently to strip voting franchise and land ownership franchise and all other kinds of franchise from very, very poor white people and black people. So didn't really work. And actually the election after the Tilden election was a disaster. The election after Ulysses S. Grant is more contentious than the 2020 election. I mean, people were almost gearing up for another civil war. The 1876 United States presidential election, not Harding, Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel Tilden. It was a nightmare. Yeah, they ended up calling him Rutherford B. Hayes. So yeah, the Reconstruction era was not a success. It wasn't because of Democrats, it was because of everybody. Putting a country together after a civil war is a very, very terrible and arduous task. Just good stuff there. This one from another great channel member, Emmy Alks. Tony, do you think that Maduro's upcoming testimony that the 2020 election was cooked in Venezuela will be acceptable in U.S. courts? That is the first I've heard of that. I don't think that anything Maduro says or admits to is going to be admissible in a United States court. There is news that Claudia Sheinbaum of the Mexican government, of the Sinaloa cartel, endorsed the sovereignty of Venezuela today, amid, again, the United States saying narco-terrorism is not allowed. So very interesting there. I don't quite know of any upcoming testimonies that are going to be allowed in United States courts. I just doubt you're going to get anything that's going to shift everything at that point. I think that the vast majority of the Trump administration and the Republican Party are just trying to press on with the rest of this term. Producer Nick?
Considering that Maduro has a $50 million reward, I think the only thing that will happen if he goes to a court is an immediate arrest and then trial.
Yeah, if he comes to the United States, I hope it's to find a nice rope. That's just my particular hope for Nicolas Maduro. So those things said, let's keep on looking into some of these election results. I wasn't planning on going as long as I am this show tonight, but hey, we said we'd go to cover the election data. So we're going to cover the election data. Right now, the Associated Press has Matt Van Epps pulling away just slightly. Again, it's like dead even, 49.8% to 49.1%. But he has pulled away-ish 47,300 votes to Aftyn Behn's 46,585 votes. Looking over at the Tennessee Special Election website, I don't know, elections.tn.gov/district/congressional. I like that, by the way, though. I like states counting the ballots officially, so I don't have to rely on anyone else if I don't want to. But they currently have Aftyn down to Matt Van Epps, 45,990 to 45,358. Again, we're going to keep an eye. I think, as one comment pointed out very accurately, this be a horse race, ladies and gentlemen. Shifting the Polymarket data, though, kind of interesting stuff. Now, Polymarket has Van Epps to win by 5 to 10% instead of 0 to 5%. So now the Polymarket data has swung up to putting Van Epps at a victory by around 5 to 10 points. That's an 80% chance currently over on Polymarket. So those Europeans and, I don't know, Africans, South Americans, Central Americans, people not in the United States who are casting bets on the election, this is the way they're throwing their money, because you're not allowed in the United States to bet on U.S. elections. Not a very good thing. Elaine says, forgot who we're supposed to be rooting for. Well, the polls have closed now. I can finally endorse a candidate per FCC rules. Matt Van Epps, the West Point graduate and not crazy insane lady. That is absolutely who should be the person who at least I'm rooting for. Again, running more of a campaign to run against the insanity of Aftyn Behn, but sometimes that's the kind of thing that you need. While we have the time here, I do want to play a clip I didn't get to show earlier in the show today from CNN speculating that the DOJ is getting ready to drop 2 new freshly baked indictments for Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, and former FBI Director James Comey.
FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James to a grand jury. According to people familiar with the situation inside the Justice Department, it is expected to happen quickly, perhaps within a week. The court tossed out both the Comey and James cases. The judge found interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan did not have the legal authority of a prosecutor when the 2 were indicted. Joining us now is Tom Du.
Interesting stuff, for sure. Oh, so you're saying that people in the United States can vote on Polymarket on election stuff? That's legally, you're not allowed to vote. I mean, I guess maybe if you're casting a bet on who's going to win the election is different than saying, oh, by what margin are they going to win? That's still real sketch. Have there been lawsuits already or an investigation? I mean, again, I'm not that I think there should be. I think you should be able to bet however you want, even if I don't partake.
Yeah, you can bet basically anything on Polymarket, and now Kalshi is the new market that everybody bets on, and you can literally bet on anything. I saw somebody betting on how many times China was going to be said in a press briefing by Carolyn Levitt.
Those are the kind of really stupid bets that I appreciate. That's some fantasy football style stat tracking. I dig that. I really do. All right, so before we hit the new level of updates, Wendy said this rather correctly. The nice, boring man needs to win Tennessee. Yeah, I like that. I'm up for some boring candidates. I don't need super flashy, gonna resign from Congress 5 months from now. I'm a battered spouse. Like, no.
It is interesting that he's considered the nice, boring man, like, compared to the craziness of Aftyn.
Producer Daniel getting us back onto the track here. Hey, man, you got to space this stuff out, Producer Daniel. Sometimes it's just one of those things. You got to keep everyone on track in the best way that you can. He points out that according to the state website for the Department of State now, Matt Van Epps is up 49,000 to Aftyn Behn's 46,000. The real question I have is Nashville going to be able to pick up where Aftyn is starting to lack? 50% of the vote, according to AP, still counted. Nothing new there. But it appears Matt is starting to pull away. 64% of the votes counted in Williamson County. Again, that's includes what appear to be part of Franklin, Tennessee. 10,600 to Aftyn Behn's 7,300. So interesting stuff there. And now we're okay. Now I feel better about things. So 56% of the vote has been counted in Montgomery County. Again, for those of you keeping track, because I don't have a live map, we really should have some enterprising young coder or AI bot craft that for us. But that top middle county that's light red there, that's Clarksville in the middle of it, I said if that ends up going blue, that is going to be a really suburban sledgehammer that Republicans are going to have to address. Right now, what I'm seeing from the Associated Press is Aftyn Behn at 10,900 in Montgomery County to Matt Van Epps 10,500. He's picking up ground on her rather quickly. 56% of the votes counted in that top middle district. So we're getting there.
It seems that we were right earlier, suggesting that a lot of the counting was the early vote.
I really appreciate, David saying I appreciate Tony's gut on this election. My gut at this point is that I think that Van Epps is going to win. It's still going to be closer than Republicans like. And I'm worried that this will turn into Republicans on media running around and going, we won, we were always going to win. Don't do that. The party that goes into the midterms claiming they've got this in the bag gets screwed over by their own hubris every single time. Would you look up the recount requirement rules for Tennessee's congressional for me real quick? Just so that I don't say anything too uncouth. We like to be couthy here on the Tony Kennett Cast. Yeah, Elaine points it out. She said, I started cheering, and he jumps ahead. All right, I'm okay. I'm okay with this. Mountain Grown points out Clarksville is a majority military town. If Aftyn Behn has told them that voting for Matt Van Epps would be an illegal order, I mean, who knows what the electoral results will turn out like over in that particular region. More data coming in as quick as we can serve it to you. On the election calls information, AP is currently estimating that 54,300 votes for Matt Van Epps, 48,500 votes for Aftyn Behn, 52.3 to 46.7. He is starting to pull away. Again, Nashville only at the moment. Of course, I'm probably going to go here and refresh, and it's going to have changed. No, still just 50% of the votes counted in Nashville. Again, that's in Nashville, 17,800 for Aftyn, 3,000 for Republican Matt Van Epps. So Nashville still could come in and do some heavy lifting. Montgomery County at 67% of the votes counted now has flipped for the Republican Matt Van Epps. I say flipped, I mean flipped according to earlier in the night when Aftyn was leading out of the gate. He's currently up 13,400 votes to 12,400 votes for Democrat Aftyn Behn. So my initial concern that top middle county, that little Montgomery County around Clarksville, would not be light red. It appears now to be light red, which is good stuff. Producer Nick, do you want to summarize the recount laws, or do you want me to dig through them?
Yeah, pursuant under the TN code 217.117, the issues required to bring a recount, the procedure for recount is 1, a tie vote, 2, an indication of fraud if the number of votes effective would be sufficient to change the result of the election, 3, a malfunction of voting machine or tabulator, or 4, in any other instance the court or body with jurisdiction of a contested election finds that a recount is warranted.
So, I mean, the tie vote in this particular instance looks, I'm not seeing a tie, a dead tie down the middle. This isn't a margin of error thing. All right, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, the decision desk has officially called this race for Republican Matt Van Epps. I repeat, the decision desk headquarters has officially called this election for Republican Matt Van Epps. He is the choice of the team. Associated Press hasn't called it just yet, but the decision desk at 9:06 p.m. Eastern Time or 8:06 p.m. Central Time. If you're a lame-o in Central, I'm just kidding. I just don't like Central Time. No, but according to the decision desk, Matt Van Epps, the Republican, will win. The question now becomes, by what margin? Now, am I expecting a 20-point margin for Van Epps? No, I'm not. Would I like to see something over 10 points to look at maybe Governor Bill Lee's policies that tinted on the congressional approval? Now we need to see. What's the average gas prices that you can find for me in Tennessee right now? I want to look at some of the energy costs there. I think that's going to be part of the thing here.
From AAA fuel prices, the current average is $3.05.
$3.05. So we're starting to move on down.
For mid-grade specifically. For regular, it's $2.59.
Kathleen asks, and does Tennessee have a runoff election type situation? Well, only if there's a tie and a recount situation is triggered. That's kind of in the same statute. Being close, being within 2 or 3%, that's not enough to trigger. I can remember a lot of Tennessee elections in the past which have been close enough. In fact, friend of the show, Representative Tim Burchett, was talking to us about this very thing right before we started filming for our last interview with him about some of the close elections in the past. So that aside, want to get down to one of the last comments here before, since now again the decision desk has called it. I'm looking for the Associated Press to dig in here.
Ooh, super chat.
Pretty soon. Oh, Marcus Holiday with a $50 super chat. Incredible. He said, more of a satirical super chat, but have you talked about the story of how the Soviets' MiG-25 Foxbat scared the U.S. into making the F-15 Eagle? And am I a dirty communist for liking the MiG-25? I don't know if you're joking about that. I don't mean if the premise you're joking if we've actually talked about it. Not only have we talked about it, we did a full-on feature with one of the premier military historians who did the Daily Wire's Cold War documentary series, What We Saw. Excellent. We did a whole episode on it just for a 4th of July show last year. And it was really, really good. It's actually a fascination of mine. I love Cold War documentary. I love Cold War espionage. It drove me into certain things that I can't legally discuss on air yet. But regarding the MiG-25, yeah, Foxbat sucks. I'm sorry. Foxbat is a terrible fighter. It was advertised as being able to do all of these things, and it was a very heavy piece of junk that could go in a straight line for a few minutes. I don't think you're a dirty commie for liking it. I would think you're a dirty commie if you think the new Chinese J series of fighters is going to do anything special. No. But to that point, though, I've liked the story of Foxbat scaring the U.S. into making the F-15 Eagle and the incredible story about its design. And Lockheed Skunk Works kind of in tandem doing some cool stuff with that later that would go into the 90s, and the amazing bomber production. Like, the modern U.S. Air Force came out of that particular scare. You can see it's getting me excited. It has been the benchmark story that we reference all the way back into our AI discussions when DeepSeek came out. I was like, this is another Foxbat situation. So to answer your question, yeah, we have. It's a very big favorite of mine. You're in the right place, my friend. All right, new information coming in. Daily Wire or Daily Signal from Blue Arrow. The Daily Signal, us, we were the ones who did the interview with the guy who did the Daily Wire Cold War documentary series.
I believe specifically he did their space race coverage.
I believe that the space race and some of the Cold War stuff. He did kind of some of both.
The Cold War's involvement in pushing us into the space race.
Excellent stuff. Really good. You can find that down in the Tony Kennett Cast playlist. You can find that. We'll go ahead and see maybe if we can link that in a comment after the show ends on the live stream side this evening. All right, that stuff said and aside, now that the decision desk has called it, let's see if the Associated Press is ready just yet. Nope. With 65% of the vote counted, it's 59,000 to 50,000. Matt Van Epps in the lead. Yeah, Daniel Elmore said he did two different series, one on the space race and one on the Cold War. He's just good. It was really good stuff. Right now, the Associated Press has Nashville still at 50%. I'm interested in seeing how much Nashville ends up coming out on kind of a one-sided electoral presence for her. I'm really interested in that. Interesting stuff. All right, there is one other funny, goobery mail time question from JT Techno. Question: why were the Republicans protecting pedos? Leading questions are so much fun. When did you stop beating your wife? There's no way to answer that, because you assume based on your question, there's no evidence of Republicans overtly protecting pedophiles. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Right now, what you've seen is a lot of Republicans pushing to get things published. You saw some bad decisions made, which of course we've covered extensively on the show. Leading questions should in fact be made fun of. And that's not even a good leading question. Do better. That said, we're going to check one more time. The decision desk, of course, has called the election for Matt Van Epps. According to the elections.tn.gov, the Secretary of State's office, Trey Hargett's projections, he currently has the vote tally for Republican Matt Van Epps at 61,700 to Aftyn Behn's 55,200. So it does look like we're going to see Matt pull away. Now I'm interested in some of the deeper tallies. I'm interested in how many voted early, and if there were any mail-in or absentee ballots cast. I'm interested in seeing this. That kind of data is going to be fun and fascinating. Really, really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. All right, we'll go ahead and start moving things a little bit to the close, I think, this evening. I think that now we've gotten a lot of really excellent coverage this evening. I think the decision, again, normally we like to use probably the AP and Decision Desk to call a race, but with the Decision Desk calling it for Matt Van Epps and seeing, the state website has him pulling away faster than the AP can end their vote tallies. I think I'll let my crew take a little bit of the rest. The AP has 72% of the vote in. They say no call. At this point, though, I think you'd actually have to see Nashville just go solid blue for the remainder of the race. And that is better than the ratio she currently has. So what I mean, very briefly here, is that in Nashville right now, with 64% of the vote counted, now the AP is starting to track, it is Aftyn Behn at 22,000, Matt Van Epps at 4,700. So with 64% of the vote counted, she would have to maintain, given if the other districts maintained their particular ratio of percentages of Republicans voting for Matt Van Epps and Democrats voting for Aftyn Behn, Nashville would have to pull even more blue than it currently is with the 82% for Aftyn Behn. Given that it's currently 65-6 to 58, she'd have to pull, 86, 87% of the vote? And right now she's pulling 82 in Nashville. That's not going to get any bluer, I don't think. So I think that aside, you're smiling. What am I doing? Am I doing something really goofy? Oh, you've thrown something in the chat. Well, that's terrifying. A mail time question. Will the Secretary of War survive the war crimes? More amazing leading questions. You got to love at the end of the show.
I was just happy they tried again per your recommendation.
If at first you don't succeed, do the exact same thing over and over. We'll call it a Texas series of Senate races. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful evening. I know it's been a long show, a fun show, a little bit of election coverage. Glad to have you. We will be back tomorrow evening for a roundup of the day's news and nonsense. I need to go record the top news in 10. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all take care.